What's going on, everybody? Welcome in. It's Fantasy Alarm TV. I'm your host, Howard Bender, and welcome to 3-Point Play, a one-on-one debate between Fantasy Alarm analysts. And that's right, I'm joined here today by my man Matt Sells. After having taken care of James Grande in the last episode here, I figured I'd toughen up the competition and go with one of the most analytical minds that we've got here at Alarm. If you've seen any one of his spreadsheets for NASCAR or MLB, you know exactly what I'm talking about here. Matt, do I need to explain the rules to you?
Nope, I think they're pretty clear, which is why James Grande lost last
That
episode.
is exactly why he lost. For those of you just joining us, it's very simple. We debate 3 topics. We're on each side of the argument there. The only rule that is that you have to make 3 valid, separate points about your argument there in order to continue and be able to debate and dispute what the other person has said. That's the only one there. Grande definitely was not making 3 separate points in his. I'm very sure that you, Matt Sells, are well more prepared than that now, are you not?
I have about 7 per topic.
About 7 per topic. Well, we only need 3, dude. We only need 3, so you better make it your 3 best. Well, then, without further ado, let's get it going here right now. First topic of debate, and this is a classic one in fantasy sports all over the place, head-to-head versus standard roto. Now, I'm not even going to make it sports-specific here. I mean, I wish there would be more roto in football, that it could actually be a debate, but let's just stick to it. Fantasy sports, head-to-head versus rotisserie. Matt Sells, which side are you on?
I'm taking the rotisserie side. Always been a fan of rotisserie rather than head-to-head. If we're talking baseball, you know, it's a sport that takes an entire team to win a championship. Not just 2 guys or 1 guy can carry you like head-to-head formats can. You know, if you have Mike Trout in a head-to-head baseball, you're pretty much set every single week because that guy's going to show up. The second point, rotisserie leagues favor guys that do a little bit of everything, which is still how sports teams are made now. It doesn't matter, like there's, you know, analytics are prevalent now, but teams are still built on guys that can do a little bit of everything, which is what roto requires. So that's the second point. Third point, you know, baseball and football, they're both judged on how you do for the full season or the majority of the season. It's not just 1 week or 1 day at a time when you get, you know, if you don't show up, then you get cut. No, that's not generally how it works. So if we're talking about roto, it takes into account months worth of data to shoot you up the board in standings and whatnot. And, you know, if we're talking baseball, since it is baseball season, head-to-head, if your team faces, you know, let's say you've got a guy who doesn't hit lefties very well and your team faces 5 lefties, that guy's not going to get you anything that week. You know, roto, yeah, you lost a week worth of stuff, but that's 1 week in 26 or 1 week in 16 in football, not 1 week of 1 week.
All right, there you go. Those are your 3 points. That's what you're sticking with for your side of the argument.
Right now, let's hear what you've got.
Well, allow me to first, my first point here. Let's talk about the fact that something that you just said. I can counter your point with my point here. It's closer to real baseball, man. The scheduling is you prepare each week for a different opponent. So if you've got somebody on your roster who's going to be facing a whole bunch of lefties like he's doing in the real world, guess what? He's going to ride the pine in the real world as well as on my fantasy team. So being able to make that week-to-week adjustments to your roster to cater to the opponent you're facing that week, that to me, that's like real baseball there, man. That's Aaron Boone sitting there trying to figure out what he wants to do against the Blue Jays in this series or what he wants to do against the Angels in that series. So I love that aspect of head-to-head. Point number 2, listen, as fantasy sports continues to evolve, so does society, and they go hand in hand. And let's face it, people prefer short-term competition, the long, draining 6-month baseball season where I have to sit and watch and count how many home runs. I want boom, boom, boom. I want short and sweet. I want week by week. I want to beat this guy. I want to beat that guy. Then I want to turn around and I want to beat somebody else after that. I want to have that steady procession of wins after wins after wins. Then you know what? We can talk playoffs there for grand supremacy. But week to week, my friend, that's what I like to have. Number 3, smack talk, baby. It's all about the smack talk. It's fantasy sports. We're supposed to be having fun, are we not? Like, sit there. I'm going to smack talk you in your rotisserie league, be like, whoa, I see you in my rearview mirror there. Good luck getting those 26 stolen bases over the course of the next 3.5 months just to catch. The smack talk's just not the same. Matt, I've got Malik Smith in my roster this week, and guess what? He's going to crush you in the stolen base category all by himself. Like, that's what I love there. So give me some head-to-head over the rotisserie. Roto's for stodgy old farts, not for the young, hip, and slick.
Well, to counter your first point, which countered my first point, there's weekly roster moves in Roto. So if a guy's going to face a bunch of lefties, you can still move him out. Secondly, smack talk. We're really going to base this off of smack talk.
Why not?
You can still smack talk in Roto. You should be a part of my 22-team Roto league. There's some great smack talk going on in there. And during the draft, which carries over year by year. So, I don't fully buy the we have to have immediacy. No, that's not what, life's not a sprint. Life's a marathon. So why not mimic sports, which are marathons? They're not sprints. No season, no player has ever come out and said, woo, we won the first 2 weeks, let's go to the playoffs. That's not how life works. Every football player, basketball player, hockey player, baseball player, all of them, even soccer, if we want to go there, say that it's a marathon, not a sprint. That's what Roto is. It mimics that relationship of sports in real life.
That cliche is as old and tired as my great-granddaddy, who used to play fantasy baseball back when Pepsi was a nickel. And then we had to sit there and take these by hand because it's a marathon, Matthew. It's not a sprint. Kids want sprints these days. That's just the way it goes. I can't help it if the world has a short attention span. I'm just giving them what they want.
So let them play DFS and put money on the line every day.
Oh, that's exactly what they're doing. And now that sports wagering is getting legal more and more and more, we're going to have that. What do you guys out there think? Do me a favor here. Jump on Twitter at Fantasy Alarm, at The Salesman, and at Roto Buzz Guy. Tweet us. What do you prefer, head-to-head or rotisserie? Now, let's move on to our second argument here, and that is the Chicago Cubs have brought in Craig Kimbrell. 3 years, $43 million. They don't have any draft pick compensation. Ben Zobrist, having a horrible divorce with his wife, drops off the team, hands them basically $15 million and says, go ahead, do what you got to do. They bring in Craig Kimbrell. Is this a good thing for fantasy owners, or is this a bad thing for fantasy owners? Matt Sells, Craig Kimbrell, yay or nay? I'm going to lead it off here, and I'm going to say nay. And I'm going to start off by telling you, late signees from last year, look at what happened to them. Lance Lynn, Jake Arrieta, Greg Holland. All of these guys sucked coming back. Their numbers for the initial 2 months of the season were terrible. Absolutely terrible. Greg Holland couldn't save his way out of a paper bag. Jake Arrieta couldn't pitch his way out of a paper bag. And don't even get me started about how atrocious Lance Lynn's first, 8 to 10 starts were. So the fact that he's got no spring training, and now he's missed, 2, and he's about to miss a third full month of the Major League Baseball season. By the time he gets back up into regular form, the season's going to be almost over. How much work is he actually going to give you guys, and how many saves is he really going to net you? Point number 2. Let's talk about the fact that last season the Red Sox went to Chris Sale and Nathan Eovaldi in the bullpen. They didn't even go to Craig Kimbrell. Why? Because his home run per fly ball rate was way higher than it used to be. You've got declining peripherals left and right with him. The walk rate was up. And I'm sorry, man, but that's just if the Red Sox turned around and said, you know what, we're not going to sign him. We don't trust him here in the playoffs. We're not going to sign him. So what makes us think Craig Kimbrell is going to sign with the Cubs and be Craig Kimbrell? Point number 3, fly ball pitcher. That fly ball rate has been steadily climbing over the last 3 years. Launch angles are increasing. He's not making the necessary adjustments. You give me the wind blowing out in Wrigley all summer long, and I'm going to show you a ton of blown saves.
All right. Well, I guess it's my turn to turn you around on that one. I'm going yay for Craig Kimbrell in the bullpen. First of all, the Cubs need stability in their bullpen. They've already had 4 pitchers try to record a save. They're tied for second most in blown saves with the Nationals and the Pirates, whose bullpens have been terrible, yet the Cubs seem to fly under the radar. They've blown 12 saves already and only have 13 on the season, which is, by the way, less than the Nationals. So he's there to be a stabilizing factor. And if everybody else slides in behind him in a roll, you can stabilize the rest of the bullpen. As for his peripherals, his hard hit rate last year was 27.1%, which is the lowest he's posted since 2015 and was 12 points lower than the prior year. So that's going down. He actually threw more curveballs than he ever has in his career. And when he threw the curveballs, his 145 xFIP was 2 runs better than on his fastball. His WOBA of 142 on that pitch was 150 points better than the fastball. His 43% ground ball rate and 49% K rate on that pitch were better than the fastball. So if he throws more curveballs, he's less hittable and strikes more guys out. And the Cubs pitching staff knows that. That's why their guys perform better than almost anywhere else. As for the comps to guys who missed, parts of last season, they're all older than Kimbrell is at this point. Greg Holland signed with the Nats, and let's face it, they can't make anybody work in the Nats bullpen. Look at that bullpen this year. Trevor Rosenthal signed early, still sucks. Kyle Barraclough signed early, still sucks. Greg Holland is fine in Arizona now. I have no concerns about Craig Kimbrell closing out games in Chicago at this point.
Man, I got to tell you, you talk about him throwing the increased use of the curveball there instead of bringing that heat that he's supposed to be bringing. Let me ask you, when you don't have spring training and you're nearly 2.5, you're 2 months into the season now, and you haven't been on a typical regiment that you're on, and you start throwing more curveballs and you start putting more torque on that arm, how long before you think we're going to get a forearm strain or maybe the elbows barking a little bit? Like, that's usually what happens when guys who don't trust their fastball start turning to their breaking stuff more.
He still threw a fair amount of fastballs. I mean, he threw over 60% fastballs. So let's not say that he's been throwing more curveballs than fastballs, because he's thrown more fastballs.
I'm not saying he's throwing more curveballs than fastballs. I'm saying if he backs off of the fastball to throw more curves because he feels that pitch is more effective, it's putting more strain on his arm.
Yes. Now, I will say this. According to him and his agent, he's been on a regular pitching workout this entire time. Now,
who's his agent?
Not against...
Who's his agent?
Scott Boras.
Liar!
Now, it's not against major league hitters, obviously. It's been like 8 months since he's been on a mound against major league hitters. However, there's another thing working in his favor. The NL Central is a whole lot less offensive than the AL East has been. He's on the team with arguably the best and most consistent offense in that division. The only other threat is the Brewers, and at the rate the Cubs played the Brewers earlier this year, I don't think they have that many more games against the Brewers left. So, you're talking about much more pitcher-friendly parks in that division than the AL East. He's away from Fenway. He's away from Toronto. He's away from Yankee Stadium. He's away from Baltimore. He's away from Tampa. So, and who knows? He may get to face some pitchers or some pretty weak pinch hitters because, he's in the NL versus the AL. So, I think Kimbrell's fine. He's still just over 30. The other guys that signed late were all into their late 30s. That's going to have a bigger effect.
That division is pretty putrid, isn't it? I mean, it's not as bad as the AL Central, but they're trying to give them a run for the money, are they not?
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
All right, here. Finally, third argument here. Who's the bigger bust? Is it Aaron Nola or is it Jose Ramirez? Both guys been sucking for fantasy owners right now. Matt Sells, who's the bigger bust?
I have it as Jose Ramirez, and I don't even think it's close. Jose Ramirez had an ADP, according to the NFBC, if you start the ADP from November of last year until the very first day of the season this year, Jose Ramirez's ADP on average was 4.7, which is the third highest of any player regardless of position. Nola's ADP of 24.7 puts him 25th, or at the 6th or 7th pitcher. Jose Ramirez was the top third baseman taken, and it was like 5 spots ahead of Nolan Arenado. Amongst third basemen, yes, his 15 steals are great. However, the next closest third baseman in steals is Rafael Devers, who was the 20th third baseman off the board. His 8 steals are the next closest. Meanwhile, Devers is hitting 316, 374, 513, and has twice the counting stats in homers, runs, and RBI that Jose Ramirez has. Jose Ramirez is tied for the worst in home runs and average among qualified third basemen, second worst in runs, third worst in RBI, fourth worst in on-base percentage. Simply put, he's the worst offensive third baseman in baseball this year, and it's not close. So, yeah, if you're counting Aaron Nola as a bust, you also have to count half of the top 5 pitchers as busts as well. I just don't see how Nola can count as a bust, but nobody else in the top 10 does.
Well, that's not the argument, man. We're talking about Jose Ramirez versus Aaron Nola here. If you want to start debating all the busts in pitching, well, I mean, do we have a couple of hours for this show?
Jose Ramirez is a bigger bust than Aaron Nola. It's not close. And part of the reason is if you take them in their position or amongst their, hitters versus pitchers, Aaron Nola you can group in amongst others. Ramirez you can't. Ramirez is on an island by himself.
All right, well, here we go. And I'll start with the fact that I think Aaron Nola is possibly the bigger bust. Number one, the 15 stolen bases that you are getting from Jose Ramirez, okay, is a huge boost. Now, yes, the 4 home runs, the 20 RBI, and the 207 batting average, they definitely suck. But he is definitely giving you some value there. Aaron Nola, this dude's not giving you any value. You took Aaron Nola where you took him, and you said, what, 24th is the ADP, roughly?
Yes.
Okay, so that's what, tail end of the second round, early third round. You took Nola to be your ace. You bypassed great starting pitching. If you took him at the tail end of the second round, guess what that means? That means you probably passed up on Max Scherzer. You probably passed up on Chris Sale. You passed up on some really high-level arms that you could have had, okay? So that Nola could be your number one guy. And that means that he is far from being that guy who you drafted. Number two, he's crushing your ratios right now. He's crushing them. He's throwing on an average of 6 innings per start here, and he's just getting pounded. So your ERA, you've got all of these innings that you're chucking onto your ERA of just disgustingness. You're getting it up the whip hole left and right because the dude's walking more guys, and he's pitching to way more contact than he actually should be. And then point number 3, the dude's not showing any signs of improving because every time he has a strong start, he follows it up with garbage. It's hot, it's cold, it's hot, it's cold, it's hot, it's cold. He's killing me right now. And you can't take him out and say, oh, I'm not going to start him, because if you end up missing a good start from him to counter all the putridness that he's given you before, you gotta leave him in your lineup there. At least with Jose Ramirez, when he's going, 0 for 90, you can take him out of your lineup and sit him, for crying out loud. Nola's a guy, you got to chuck him out there. What? He's playing the Tigers? Yes. What? He's playing the Marlins? Yes. What? He's given up 9 runs to each of them in 5 innings of work? Yes. Brutal, dude. Brutal.
So let me counter with this. Aaron Nola, before his last start where he gave up 6 earned, had gone since the last start in April until his first start in June, had gone all of those starts giving up no more than 3 earned in a start. His ERA was 4.17 before the last start. League average this year is 4.41. So he's still better than league average. And if we want to compare him against all those great pitchers that you missed by taking Aaron Nola to be your ace, Nola has 6 wins. The only one of the top 11 pitchers taken that has more is
you,
Verlander's 9.
Mr. Analytics, you're going to come at me with wins as the.
I'm just saying, people play in wins leagues. It counts. We're talking fantasy, yes. For Cy Young and standard baseball comparisons, no, wins don't count. But we're talking fantasy. Aaron Nola has 6 wins. The only pitcher in the top 11 that we're taking that has more is Justin Verlander's 9. We're comparing him to Scherzer. Scherzer has 3, mainly because his bullpen sucks. But he hasn't been on top of it for, he's been up and down too. He hasn't been great. Kluber's been a bust. DeGrom, you can't count on him every other start. Syndergaard's been terrible. Bauer's been terrible. So if we're comparing him against top 10 pitchers, which is what he was drafted to be, he's actually not that far out of place with the other top 10 pitchers. If we want to talk about the best pitchers in baseball right now, Hyunjin Ryu had an ADP of 182. Paddock and Boyd were at 321, and Odorizzi was at 464. So I think it's quite possible that everybody missed on pitching this year. Meanwhile, if you took Jose Ramirez to be your starting third baseman, you missed on Arenado, Bregman, Baez, Machado, Bryant, Rendon, Vlad Jr., who already has better counting stats than Jose Ramirez. Eugenio Suarez, Matt Chapman, Moustakas, and Devers are all having better years, and Devers was the 20th third baseman off the board this year, according to NFBC ADP. So, pitching's been terrible, and yes, in season long and DFS, it's been terrible, and it's been biting people. But you can't count Nola as a huge bust and then disregard the fact that the entire rest of the top 11 have been bad. And I didn't even mention Carrasco, who's now done with some blood disorder.
That is true. See, now, had you finished that up with a so suck it Bender, then I probably would have just conceded this last point here. But no, I'll just turn this over to those watching, those who want to comment. Again, at Fantasy Alarm on Twitter, at The Salesman on Twitter, at RotoBuzzGuy. Great work, Matt Sells. I knew I could count on you for a spicy debate here.
Yeah, that was fun.
Of course it's fun. It's what it's supposed to be. It's all about the smack talk, right? Right?
Yeah, but there's still smack talk in Roto.
Oh, please. All right. Well, that's going to do it for us here at 3 Point Play. From Matt Sells, big thanks to our producer, John and Pemba. I'm Howard Bender. We'll catch you next time.